Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special meeting of council on February 7th, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:31. We'll begin the agenda with disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move to approval of our previous minutes. We're looking at the minutes from February 1st. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have the resolution?
That the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on February 1st, 2024 be adopted as printed and circulated.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Surinam moves. Counselor Wilson seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. So we'll move to reports of department. So essentially, we're continuing our budget deliberation, which is the purpose of holding a special meeting this evening. And for that, we'll move into committee of the whole.
That the committee of the whole meeting relating to the 2024 draft budget be called to order at 7:32 p.m. to allow members to participate in budget deliberations.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis moves. Deputy Mayor Widner seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so we left off last week with staff reports, the first one being on the mileage reimbursement rate. Director Boylan, you want to take it from here?
Thank you. So the first report, the township reimburses staff and council for their use of personal vehicles for a township business. The township's current mileage reimbursement rate was improved in 2020 at 52 cents per kilometer. Our vehicle expense policy allows for mileage reimbursement rate to occasionally be adjusted through council resolution to reflect the higher cost of vehicle ownership, particularly due to the rising cost of fuel. My report is recommending that we increase our mileage reimbursement rate so it more accurately covers personal vehicle costs. I've used the CRA's reasonable mileage rate as a benchmark for my recommendation, which is to increase our mileage reimbursement rate to 70 cents per kilometer for 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Not seeing any, so we'll proceed with the resolution.
That council can approve amending the township's mileage reimbursement rate increases to 70 cents per kilometer as part of the budget deliberations.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis moves. Counselor Leach seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, next report is regarding the Aylmer Pool Agreement. Director Boylan.
Yes, so for council's consideration is a recommendation to withdraw from our agreement with the town of Aylmer to provide ongoing financial assistance to operate the pool. Based on the contents of our agreement, financial contributions to the pool are on a voluntary basis. In exchange for contributions, we were to receive a seat on the Aylmer Recreation Council, which is a former governing body of the Aylmer Pool. Further looking into the agreement, we have no ability to exercise control over operating decisions. We don't own any of the associated assets, and our residents don't receive discounted fees or priority booking. So township residents don't seem to receive any benefit for their taxes and are treated identically to, say, a resident in BAM or St. Thomas who doesn't make financial contributions for the pool. So on that basis, we're recommending we withdraw from the agreement, which would result in annual savings of $19,000 per year. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Almost seems like a housekeeping matter in the sense that the structure that generated that payment is no longer in place. Councilor Glinski.
Malahide students would, Madam Mayor, Malahide students will still be allowed to use the swimming pool by paying a fee, like the same as the Aylmer swimmers do. Is that correct?
Director Boylan, I don't know if you're able to comment on that.
We have no ability to control the operations of the Elmer pool, so I can't really speak to the town of Elmer, but I imagine they would want as much usership as possible to fund the ongoing operations of the pool.
It doesn't sound like this agreement would have an impact one way or another based on previous years on actual user fees for Malahide residents, I think is what I'm understanding. Yeah. Further comments or questions? Let's hear the resolution.
That the Township of Malahide provide notice to the Town of Elmer of its withdrawal from the joint use agreement of the Elmer Swimming Pool, and that the Township of Malahide discontinue financial contributions to the Town of Elmer for the pool operations.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna moves, Counselor Glinsky seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. The next report is regarding the migration of to Laserfish Cloud. And you'll report on that, Clerk Adams. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jaguar. As outlined in the report, the township has utilized Laserfish for many years to complement its records and information management system. Laserfish, like most software, offers a cloud-based version that offers convenience, flexibility, and security as detailed in the report. Transitioning to the Laserfish cloud model is fairly straightforward, and although there is an increased cost for transition, the benefits of the cloud-based version and annual cost savings help migrate that one-time cost differential.
Thank you for that. Seems pretty straightforward, a good example of taking the long view. Any questions or comments? Okay, we'll hear the resolution, please.
The report number clerk 2402 entitled Migration to Laserfish Cloud be received, and that council approve the authorization to purchase Laserfish Cloud from Rico Canada Inc. at an estimated cost of $35,000 plus HST as part of budget deliberations.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Glinsky moves, Counselor Lewis seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. The next item on the agenda is the special area rating, and we'll be back to Director Boylan for this report.
Thank you. So as requested during last year's budget deliberations, I've reviewed our special area levy for the streetlights and sidewalks in Springfield. So a bit of a recap: since amalgamation, residents in the village of Springfield pay property tax in addition to their general property tax to fund streetlights and a portion of the cost of sidewalks. This includes streetlight hydro, streetlight maintenance, 40% of sidewalk maintenance, and contributions to the future replacement of infrastructure. Winter maintenance on sidewalks is excluded and therefore paid through the general tax base. So as a result of the special levy, the median residential property in Springfield pays $109 more in property taxes each year than an identical property elsewhere in the township. So my review of the special levy yielded the following for council's consideration. Not all areas of the township that have access to streetlights and sidewalks are being charged a special levy. I've included a map in my report for review. Eligible services that benefit specific areas such as Port Bruce icebreaking, for example, are recovered through the general tax base rather than a special levy. Properties in the area are receiving different levels of service, with some properties abutting sidewalks while others do not. Historically, the special levy has lacked transparency and consistency, as the township's current bylaw to enact the special levy does not speak to how the costs are determined, leaving too much room for interpretation by staff. And then expanding the use of special area rating to other areas of the township, such as Port Bruce, for example, would result in additional administrative costs for real no benefit to the residents. So my take on it is streetlights and sidewalks tend to be a feature in urbanized areas for pedestrian safety. There's generally an expectation for these amenities to exist. So in my opinion, special levies are best applied against services which are in excess of what would be considered standard or recommended through best practices in a given area. For these reasons, I'm recommending we discontinue Springfield special area levy. If approved, an average residential property in Springfield would again pay $109 less per year, while an average residential property elsewhere in the township would pay an additional $7. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the follow-up from last year's discussion. Comments, questions? Counselor Lewis.
Through you, your worship, thank you. Just having conversations before the meeting with individuals. I see the fault as maybe being the bylaw. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't put this off until we can deal with a bylaw and then review it then, and then have more of a scope on actually where the funds and how the funds are being placed and what they're actually doing. And then it would be a little more transparent for everybody and we'd all understand a little bit more. It wouldn't be just so just a suggestion.
Counselor Glinski, did I see your hand up as well?
Madam Mayor, if the residents of Mount Salem, say, wanted to see some streetlights in that area, what would be the process? They're paying the same property tax as Springfield is, and they have streetlights. So what would be the process for Mount Salem to have streetlights?
Director Boylan or Director Godby?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Right now, from my understanding of the process is there's a special levy for Springfield for those lights. So as they pay, I believe it would be something that streetlights would be looked at through the use of those levy funds, whereas Mount Salem has never contributed to the streetlight fund. Therefore, the only way to do that would be to have that come out of the general tax coffers or implement a special levy in Mount Salem with the purpose of paying for and recovering funds for streetlights. As of right now, we don't have a formal streetlight request policy. So that would be something that would also need to be given consideration and look to have developed.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to follow up? Sure. And then I'll finish around the circle.
Madam Mayor, we're eliminating special charges. And am I hearing that we need to institute special charges at Mount Salem in order to have lights put in? Did I hear that properly or not?
Counselor Godby, do you want, Counselor?
I got
Just
promotion.
elected you. Director Godby.
That's, yeah.
Okay, teamwork.
We are not required to levy a special levy under any circumstances. The current methodology is to charge a special levy for streetlights and sidewalks in theory. So if we keep the one in Springfield, then yes, in theory, we would also apply the same methodology to Mount Salem. But the proposal on the table is to not have any special levies and just put streetlights and sidewalks where they make sense to put streetlights and sidewalks, ideally informed through a policy adopted by council, as Director Godby has mentioned.
Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You to Adam, I guess, Adam, you had quite a few points you brought up, like, would this be a good time to have a good look at this and refresh the charges and see if we actually are losing money or making money and what we should be charging would be appropriate? Because I know we have sidewalks and we have lights and we may be in a good spot, we may be in a bad spot, so if we need a new bylaw, we could propose it then, and that would help out for any other area that would need or ask for these things. So just an asking, thank you.
Director Borland, did you wish to respond?
Yeah, I think if it's council's wish to retain the use of special levies, I think this one that we currently have in Springfield, my wish would be to bring back a report that maybe restructures it a little bit, makes it a little bit more of a transparent process for the residents, and then council can consider that bylaw, whether they want to pass the restructured version of the special levy or not.
We have Counselor Wilson, and then I'll go to Counselor Cerna. Go ahead, Counselor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Looks like there's more streetlights on Springfield Road than the rest of the township combined. So, I've got people in my riding or my ward that benefit from sidewalks and streetlights. And I've got a whole lot of other area that doesn't. And I don't know how I keep everyone happy on that one. It's yeah, I won't. Yeah, well, hey, it's I I don't feel like paying for street lights and sidewalks because I live 4 miles north of here. I don't have any sidewalks. I don't have any street lights unless I install them myself. And I pay for the hydro and pay for the cement myself. So the township only has so many levers. This is one. Thank you.
Counselor Cerna?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When we talk about Port Bruce and the flood prevention, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is a mandated program for flood mitigation, is it not?
I can answer this
An
because
answer from
I asked the
Counselor
same
Wilson.
question and I got informed that you cannot give a special levy for the flooding. You can't charge a special levy for the ice breaking. I don't see any reason why you couldn't charge a special levy for sidewalks and lights. You can't charge it for the ice breaking because the rest of the township is dumping that water into Port Bruce, and it's not their fault that they're taking whatever the township's giving them. But I don't think that has anything to do with lights or sidewalks.
So what I'm hearing is, so this concept of a community benefit levy is fairly complex. Like there are things you should be using it for, things you should not be using it for. It sounds like our current use may be flawed a little bit or is warranting further review. Just to see if there are some flaws and that we should consider further. And yeah, I do find it interesting that it is it's an interesting concept because you talked about, is it a feature or is it a standard? And so I'm wondering if we could be, if there could be a follow-up report where we could be educated a little bit more so we understand. So I think we all agree it's a tool that is available to us, but how to use it, what are best practices, and to help us maybe make a more informed decision. Would that be agreeable with staff? Just to help us understand a bit better and educate us and then recommend some changes perhaps to the bylaw as to what was Councillor Lewis mentioned. CODs.
Yes, I think we can definitely look into it. And I think specifically it will help answer, I think, a philosophical question. And I think more or less to do with location, but more or less what would be included in such special levies. Like we mentioned, if it is sidewalks and streetlights, then it should be treated on a fair basis, where we would be looking at streetwalks and sidewalks, for instance, with certain other areas. Of course, we can look into that and propose what that would look like in theory and how that would work and bring that back to council.
And as far as the budget deliberations, would that have an impact? Like, would we need, or would you wish to settle this completely? Or could we separate that, like almost remain in status quo and then consider that decision separately at a later time? I don't know.
It's built into the general levy increase, so it's hard to say, like, you could approve everything else in principle, staff could proceed with work plans, and then we can just kind of deal with that item as that's happening. That would be fine.
So it wouldn't hold up the whole process. Okay. Do you have a resolution that would capture that?
That council deferred the decision of discontinuing the special area rating in Springfield and that council directs staff to provide a follow-up report on the special area rating in Springfield.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis moves. Counselor Leach seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so I think that completes the staff reports and the budget deliberations that were, accompanied with staff reports. But before we move out of committee of the whole, I'm happy to open it up for any other questions related to the budget that's been presented and proposed. So, and no specific order or sequence. If this is the time, this is the deliberations of the entire budget. So any question, any issues you want to raise, we still have another meeting next week where we can perhaps finalize, but there's a little bit of space between today and next meeting to answer further questions if necessary. So I'll open the floor. Counselor Wilson.
I was wondering when we might be having any of the meetings with the complex, the tour, and any numbers on that and the prioritization, because if we need to hypothetically spend $600,000 on a roof, that should be part of the budget. And I'm not sure how fast any of that's going to come together, but it would be a hell of a kick if it's 86 or 83,000 per percent, half of 600. It's a few more percentages that we don't really probably want to deal with. So we should probably know a little bit more about that before we have our final deliberations.
Director Boylan, did you want to comment on the ideal sequencing, or can we do things in parallel? Can you remind us of what you included in this version? And so how we can coordinate all this?
Yep. So our budget includes the EECC's capital forecast as it was originally devised before they did their deferral. So that $600,000 project is built into how we're deciding to fund the capital budget. Any cuts from this point on, I could recommend cuts to our levy increase, depending on what that looks like. But right now, yeah, we're set up to fund all the asks that the EECC has on the table. In terms of approval process, we normally try and take care of the township as a whole first, and we expect the EECC to come later. So ideally, we do an approval of the township budget in principle. We have a standing resolution that requires that council approve the EECC budget through a separate resolution that's extraneous to the township's own budget approval process. So 2 resolutions to get the township's budget completely passed, one being for the township, one for being ECC, and then we can do the bylaws and the tax rates, et cetera.
And can you remind us what you budgeted for capital? What is the number that has been set aside in this current version?
It was, well, we built in the ECC's capital forecast for 2024 to 2029. For 2024, it was 50% of the original capital ask, which was 2.4 million. So 50% of that is 1.2 million.
So right now there's a 1.2 million built in the budget we're looking at. Okay. Comments, questions? Councilor Glinski.
Is that 50% of 1 billion, or is that the whole
So I
1
believe
million?
2.4 is the ask and our share is 1.2.
1.2 is our share,
Yes,
and they're asking for
2.4
2.4.
is the total ask from the EECC staff. Deputy Mayor Whitner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I certainly would like to see this tour come to fruition because this place is notorious for wanting to just totally replace every component, and sometimes you can fix a lot of stuff a hell of a lot cheaper than that. I think this roof and stuff shouldn't be that horrible a condition, in my opinion, but and again, I'm not an expert, according to some people, but we have saved money before on rink boards and desiccators on the roof, you know what? We all have our skill sets, and sometimes I think we all have a good look at it. There's an opportunity to save money. So, yeah, and I've spoken to Jason. I think, Jason, I'd like you to go on the tour with us. You're a hockey guy, you're an arena guy. You've been certainly involved with a lot of arenas over the years, so if it'd be council's wish, I'd request that Jason go with us too. Good set of eyes. Thank you.
Counselor Cerna?
Yeah, thank you. Madam Mayor, this through you to Adam, this 2.4, is that just for 2024 or is that for a 10-year period or what is that?
That is just for 2024. So just to remove any ambiguity, I would direct council to Appendix B of our budget document. It has the full EECC capital budget project list in it. So you can scroll through and see on a project by project basis what we would be funding.
Any further discussion or question? So the recommendations from the ECC board has not come to Malahide yet. So it's fair to say that that number is still on hold, so to speak. But there's a placeholder there. It's being factored in, but it will be, we have to go through the board process to see what number will actually come to Malahide Council for consideration, right? But it's good to reiterate that we do want to look at that number closely. Other questions or comments, other items in the budget you'd like to clarify, validate? I believe last week there was there a request about commodity prices? Or did I dream that up? From our deliberation, there was a question related to that. I don't know if staff is prepared to comment on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, yeah, there was some commentary about the general commodity price increases. For the most part, all of our contracts were that we're renewing this year for commodities like line painting or dust control. Those contracts were set at CPI, which if I believe is correct, is 3.4%. So those are the values that were reflected in the operating budget for those particular line items where it was a kind of a commodity type line item. That's what we used is those contracts, which were currently in, like they're not going out for tender this year. Those were primarily ones that were in renewal phases at this point. So that is generally what you're going to see across most of the operating budget as it relates to the public works area is if there was a commodity price increase and it was known, that was factored in. If it was as a contract renewal for CPI, the CPI was applied. But otherwise, that's basically, we're looking at everything else commodity wise was pretty much status quo. Like, for example, the amount of dust suppressant that we require is the same in 2024 as it was in 2023. So in that particular line area, all we did was applied the CPI in order to reflect the price per liter increase that we are going to see. If there's any other specifics, I'm happy to pull what we have, or if anyone has any questions about anything.
Any further questions? Counselor Lewis?
Through you, your worship. So to Jason, so gravel prices, I'm just curious if I've heard correct, but on the price increase of our cost on gravel.
Through the chair to Councillor Lewis, you'll have to leave that one with me for a minute. I have some values here. I can dig it out.
All right, and where I was going with it was, I believe it's quite a bit higher. And I was told that it was due to, of course, the construction going on locally, that our province has sort of gobbled up our local commodity of gravel. And I don't know if we shouldn't maybe be asking, everybody else is getting something out of this, but we're getting the sore end of the stick because of operating expenses that are going up because of the resurrection of this nice place. I don't know why we can't ask the county or somebody to say, hey, we're paying X amount more than what we anticipated. And I'm sure you anticipated an increase. I imagine he did. And if it's substantially higher than that, well, that's something that we've encountered because of our nice neighbors doing what they're doing. So that was one thing. And the other thing was, I got just a comment to Adam that he is very good at making a person understand what a person going into the conversation doesn't understand and almost doesn't want to, but yet he has the capability of spending a little bit of time and fulfilling questions very, very well. So thank you to Adam very much.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of us could echo that very point. So thank you for saying it in public. It's so true. Deputy Mayor Whitner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Maybe through to Scott and Adam. I believe we were told 25% increase for gravel. But interestingly enough, county council and some others sat down with Flack this week, Minister Flack. He's really disgusted with the way these prices are. Like, some of these people that kind of tried to price up projects a couple of years ago, they're coming back way, way, way higher. And he like basically, I don't get this either. It's not right, but nothing we can do about it. So they're going to be charging for this project. Everybody's going to be paying more, but everything's gone up so drastically and there's no really good rhyme or reason for it. So, we're going to be hit with it for sure. But the province is going to say, well, you're getting the benefit of something else. And that's what they'll be saying, which we'll wait and see, right? Thank you.
Director Boylan?
The estimate we used was 20% increase to gravel costs. It was a topic of discussion. We weren't sure exactly where prices would land. It was kind of like the boogeyman of this year's budget. Like we were afraid of what the future holds for us. Councillor Lewis is right. We're also concerned about the availability of the supply in light of the recent development. So all those things are true. It did affect our budget. We'll see how 2024 goes, but we think 20% is a good estimate anyway.
Yeah, and I think we can make note of that, and there will probably be other items that we will need to, and it would be wise to flag to our local MPP just to say, hey, you need to be made aware of that. We're not sure what the solution is, but at least those things should be documented and shared at least for information. Because if he doesn't know, then for sure, there's nothing that can be done, but so we'll make a note of that. Director Godby, did you want to comment further?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, I didn't have anything else to add other than the percentage increase was baked in there. I'm still trying to dig up what exactly it was now, because now you got me curious as to where it went. So when I have that, I will get that to you.
And not wanting to interrupt your frantic search, but on the subject of gravel, I think in the budget, there's it looks like it's implied that there's no conversion plans. of any of our gravel roads. So just wanted to check with staff that that is a correct assumption. So there's no plan, or is that based on those costs and increasing costs? Is that something we want to look at? I know, and we've been told before, that conversion is really expensive up front, but if you take a long-term view, maybe it is beneficial. Can you comment on that? What's the plan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and that's a great segue into this conversation. You are correct. There's currently nothing proposed in 2024 for gravel conversion. Put it simply, there's not been a firm program in place in Malahide, like where we've actually identified the roads and prioritized any needs. That will be something that we can look at through 2024 to see what eligible candidates we do have. The one thing to keep in mind is there's a lot of other factors that need to be taken into anytime you do a conversion. Part of it being what is the actual base of the roadway like under the gravel. Proper geotechnical examination should be done to make sure that you're not trying to build a hard surfaced road over a base that's not quite suitable for that. As well, you usually take into account roadside drainage. It becomes a big factor because of the impervious surface that you're now putting into the roadway. So those kind of things do need to be looked at. Cost of gravel, yes, has increased. Whether it will continue to outpace the other commodity increases. I mean, you talk about tar and chip, and you're looking at petroleum products, which that market is pretty volatile as well. Plus, you're using the chip, which is just a smaller form of aggregate. So we're kind of getting it on both sides, both of the treatment types. So that is something that we are going to take a look at through the course of the year. Anecdotally, I will say that the conversion of gravel roads to tar and chip is becoming discussed more often now. There was a recent article in the CBC basically where one of the technical experts from the Ontario Good Roads Association had referenced that, maybe some of the luster of tar and chip is wearing a little off because of it's not as durable of a driving surface over the long term with some of the heavy weights that in this area of North Dundas, they were specifically citing heavy agricultural equipment as wearing the surfaces down at an accelerated rate, so you don't get the longevity that was once thought. And with that, we would need to take some of that information, I think, into account before we really make a decision one way or another to jump in on converting gravel roads or not. I think it would be wise to kind of see how some of that plays out, do a little bit more investigation, and then come back with more of a fulsome plan to address whether we're going to do it and where specifically we may want to look at it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that would be useful to make sure that if we do no conversion, that it's an intentional decision, like based on comparing all the different options and costs and long term. So yeah, that would be great. I'll look forward to that. Other comments or questions on the budget? Councillor Leach.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Godby. On in the capital budget on page 91, you've listed the phase 3 audit, but the phase 4 audit, where is that planned? Because there's in the map that's associated, there's 1, 2, and 3, but 4 isn't listed.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Leach. So the phase 4 safety audit was originally, from my understanding, intended to focus on some of the urban areas across Malahide. taking a more detailed, specific look at, say, road safety inside the town of Springfield, or the village of Springfield, for example, down in Port Bruce. Whereas the first three phases were primarily focused across the general rural roads from the township starting in the north and heading south down to the lake.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? This is our chance to, I guess staff are waiting for direction to see if they can finalize the budget and present us a more final version next week based on our feedback and questions. Deputy Mayor Widner?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess through you to Jason. Is this a good time to discuss our rolling stock, or is this gonna be done later, or is now's the time? I see we purchased quite a bit of stuff last year, a big loader and a bunch of trucks, that's fine. We're buying a new tandem, correct?
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor, pending favorable approval from this council, yes, we would like to buy a new
Good.
truck.
And that single axle, we had a proposal through the equipment committee to maybe look at buying, or look at something different, something smaller, but cheaper and maybe more handy for the rest of the year. I believe we have a backhoe out getting repaired. Was that successful? Or we haven't got a bag yet?
Through the chair to the deputy mayor, I'll have to get an update on where that stands. It was my understanding that it is not back as of yet, but I can verify that and for sure give you an update next week.
How is our new tractor that had a very short life, in my opinion? That New Holland, it apparently didn't last 200 hours and it broke in half.
Through the chair to the deputy mayor, I'll get an update from Ryan on that one as well.
Okay, thank you. There's no other major, like, I guess there's a fire truck in the works, but that'll be,
To you, Mayor. That was from last year's budget carrying over.
carry over.
Yeah.
And that'll go through that cooperative or company or.
Yeah, so we're looking into new pricing right now. We started getting pricing back last week, and we should expect a council report to you when we get all the results back.
Favorable, or you can't tell me?
Not at this time.
I'm sorry, did you say no?
Councilor Leach?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Spoor. What is the life expectancy of an AED?
Through you, Mayor. The EADs, depending on their cycles, most electronics items like that is probably about 7 years. Although we do have some that are older than that already, so.
Any further comments? We're getting to the finer details. Just want to make sure we're feeling confident and clear about what is being presented. You know, I've appreciated being able to see line by line and where there was a discrepancy, let's say, between the budget and the forecast. You can often see a negative, that there's a recognition that maybe it was over budgeted. So this year it was a minus. So we decreased the budget, and vice versa. If there was a trend on one line that was under budget, then we increased the budget. So I really appreciated that fine tuning, that it's not kind of sometimes we see in some places that where you just take your budget from last year and you add an increase, and it's not necessarily a reflection or an analysis of what the actuals are, because a budget is a budget, but really what the most meaningful part is, to me anyway, is the actual, and then taking that into account into recommending what this year's budget is. So I really appreciated that there seemed to be that level of analysis. So to me, that increases the confidence in what is being proposed. Councillor Wilson?
It's much better than office supply places being open till midnight on New Year's Eve in Ottawa. It's spend your budget money right up to the last minute. If we don't spend it, we don't get it next year. Well, this is actually showing that you're going through it and it's being used responsibly, and it's nice to see just reiterating your point, it's nice to see that the consideration that's been given to stuff, it's fantastic.
And we recognize that takes a lot of work, but it's appreciated and it increases everybody's confidence, so. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Chief Spoor. I see we have a HVAC unit in this building, I presume it is, correct?
Yeah, yes, through your mayor. That is for this building here, but it is done through building, so. Through the asset management, I think it's identified it's time for replacement. I think it was on last year's budget as well, but it got pushed off. I think that's planned for this year, so.
What all are you replacing? I see $50,000, and maybe you won't spend all of that, but is it? I'm just looking at the picture. All I see is a furnace, but.
I'll double check myself. Sorry, Jason, but I'll double check with Chris through there, but I think it's both units for this building runs 2 units. So it runs two furnaces. One heats the office side in the training room on this side, and then the other furnace runs through the council chambers in the office on this side.
Okay.
I think it's both furnaces they're replacing.
Furnaces, and then where the fire trucks are, that's done by overhead heaters, right?
That's overhead heaters, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One question I had, just looking back at the time of the building of the South Fire Hall, I think there was talk of there's a lot of talk around the South Fire Hall, but there was talk about the tower and that it was recognized it was an additional expense, but that there was a projection and forecast of revenue coming from the use and rental of that tower for training purposes. So I know the training landscape has changed. We have now a regional school run by the county. I'm just wondering if we will ever see revenue from that or if that's passed.
We do see some revenue from the training tower, like it's small. More of a couple of organizations are using it. So last year we did build out for London Police Services have used it. This year, coming up next month, Tillsonburg Fire is using it. That's the agreement you just signed in the last council meeting for us there, just upgrade it, some names and stuff on it. Now for say the tower itself is probably not going to be a income generator, but it does get used an awful lot. So our tech team uses it on a monthly basis for sure. We do use it for other training as well, for regular fire training. As for the school using it, the school uses it if we're doing so throughout the county. All our municipalities participate in the training. So for example, for the recruit class, all municipality areas like Bayham, Malahide, Central Elgin, all take a portion of the training, offer instructors and stuff. So in order for us to keep our costs down for the training school, because it's a cost recovery, we offer up our facilities and use them for our training. So we have a portion of our firefighters in that training as well. Municipalities that are outside our regular training school pay extra towards that to keep our costs down. When we host a course for, say, a separate course like an officer course, if we host that course for the thing, we save 2 ways. One, we don't have to pay our people to drive and reimburse them for their travel. So we can the township here. Second is when we do offer a course for the school and we have people in the course, 2 of those positions throughout that it's the agreement that 2 positions are free. So we automatically get 2 people through that course for free as well. So there's savings of that way as well. But we do use the facility often, like it's regularly used. We use it today with the OPP for ourselves and Malahide staff for mental health training, first aid training today. So we got that course offered to us. The other mental health paid for the course, so we got to use the facility. We do other DZ training and stuff like that. Just for example, for revenue for last year, the courses we offered, we took in $39,000 for revenue net, which is a pretty good sum for a cost recovery. And expenses for that 39,000 is probably only about 10,000, so probably 29,000 profit just for that one course for the year. So
Well, thank you for sharing that. And it is one of our goals to optimize the use of facilities. So I was curious that that was an asset I think we invested in, and it sounds like it is really benefiting quite a few groups and ourselves. So thank you. Director Boylan, it doesn't look like there are any more burning questions, and I'm wondering, do you want to help us recap a little bit of the decisions that were made, like things that were taken off since that initial bar that was set, and decisions that are pending, or maybe a little summary? Is that fair?
Yes, I think the cut was to the community grants program for $22,775. That brings down our proposed tax rate from 6.77 to 6.5. On a consolidated count basis with the county and the province, that's a 4.58. Aside from that, we have a follow-up item for the Springfield Special Area Levy. Haven't quantified the impact of that. So I would say the community grants is the only adjustment at this point.
And
Sorry, and just to clarify, like some of the recommendations in the staff reports, those recommendations were already built into the budget. So for example, like withdrawing from the Elmer pool was already baked into the budget. So approving the recommendation doesn't result in a decrease to the levy.
the road needs study, is there an impact on, based on the discussion we had?
The road safety audit or the roads needs study?
Yeah, the road safety, yeah.
I don't believe, I don't know if council has decided what they're going to do with the road safety audit. Like there's an operating costs impact as a result of the recommendations. There's some capital projects recommended in the capital budget, like guide rail installations. There's the study itself for phase 4, but as of now, nothing's actually been cut from the budget in that regard.
Director Godby?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further to that, I guess just for clarity, you referenced the 40,000 for 2023 carried over to 2024. That's already a budgeted commitment that we've made to having the phase 3 work completed. So that work is in draft form. So we can't really do anything about that $40,000 that's being carried over from 2023. For road safety audit money, the potential might be in the future to defer the phase 4 monies right out of the budget, potentially at that point. As it was mentioned about the guide rail, and a lot of the guide rail recommendations in our capital forecast have come out of those road safety audits. However, I just note that the guide rail money that we're looking at in the 2024 budget year forms part of the road reconstruction of Chalet. And that money, that is the portion that we're doing. So we have road resurfacing, the double surface treatment rehab of Chalet from Carter Road East, and widening of that road with the addition of guide rail. A lot of that is predicated on the premise that we do have a commitment that if we are going to reconstruct a road or generally significantly alter it, that we should be bringing it up to what would be today's standard. And that is, for that reason, that's why we're doing the road widening and guide rail in conjunction this year for Chalet. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that we need that money for the 2024 guide rail project if we are going to proceed with the widening and reconstruction of Chalet Line.
Follow-up? Deputy
Yeah,
Mayor?
just to follow up if I could. So is it safe to say we won't be have any company coming in and doing an audit this year? Or we will be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we will not be having we are not scheduled to have a company doing an audit at all this year.
Okay, Counselor Glinski.
Madam Mayor, what is the bottom line then as far as levy? Is it 6.11 or is it something else?
Director Boylan, can you tell us then, so we realize, so the only thing that's been officially cut is the community grant? And we know the capital budget for ECC is not finalized, but officially the 22,000 has been decreased. So what are we looking at then? If you're able to tell us.
It depends on how you want the form of the answer because it's always complicated. So as I mentioned, we're at 6.5% right now on the township side. That's what that's the increase to our property owners portion of the Malahide bill. The province is keeping their education rate exactly the same, so 0% on that front, and then the county is deliberating a 3.7% increase. So when you consolidate those, property owners in the township would pay, if everything is approved as it's currently listed, 4.58%.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Adam. Can you equate that to the average $250,000 home then, what that charge would be with the 4 point, whatever you had there? 4.58?
$178 for an average residential property.
That's for all taxes. Okay, thank you.
And then from staff's perspective, do you feel you have enough direction to do any fine tuning that needs to be done? Any requests from council? That any further direction we can provide?
I suppose the next step would be, we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with the streetlight levy. I don't see how we pass this year's budget without having some sort of decision made in that regard. Even if it's let's just keep the levy for this year and look at it for next year, like that would be a way to get past the 2024 budget. And maybe that's something I'll recommend. I don't see the value in holding up passing the 2024 budget to a closer look at the levy. Like if that's something council wants, we can just do it shortly after we approve the budget. But aside from that, I think it sounds like there's a general consensus that council would like us to proceed with the plan as it's laid out in front of them. So if council is comfortable, I would recommend you just approve the budget in principle. I can bring forward a budget bylaw that explains like the finalization of the process. And then we just be holding it for the EECC. The difficulty becomes if you end up cutting a lot of the EECC budget, we could have passed a lower tax increase if there's significant EECC budget cuts. So council's going to have to be careful about how it handles that situation. But I don't feel like I need any further direction. I would say my recommendation to council would be probably just keep the special levy as is for 2024, direct staff to review for 2025, and pass the township's capital budget at the very least in principle so staff can proceed with their work plans. We can go begin the tendering process, creating RFPs, etc. And then we'll hold off on the final passing of the tax bylaw until we figure out what we're doing with the EECC. But it would be a commitment from council at this point to proceed with the township's portion of the capital budget at the very least, and not cut it after once we've already initiated those projects.
And would you recommend then we do the approval in principle this evening, or is that a motion or resolution you would bring to us next week?
I'd be comfortable bringing it next week, really either way. I think we were targeting February 15th as the hopeful date for us to kick off the procurement process. So I believe that's the date of our next meeting. So if we can do it then, that would be fine with us.
Works for council as well? Okay, and so that would include status quo on the area special levy, or I forget the special area rating. Status quo, which is what is recommended by staff, so we're a little bit more informed this year and we'll be even more informed next year. So that would be what we would be approving in principle. It sounds, Director Boylan.
So if you do end up approving that, there is, we should probably walk through the impact to the budget as a result of that decision. So maybe that's something you can collectively decide now, and then I can walk council through how the decision would impact the budget.
So the resolution we could consider is that we defer the decision on, well, what I mean, like defer not to next meeting, but defer to next year's budget. That would be the resolution to consider tonight?
You would,
Or,
you would pass a resolution that keeps the special area levy. And then from that point, what I would like to do is communicate how that impacts the budget to council, because it's not very cut and dry. And I think it warrants a bit of an explanation.
Clerk Adams, would you like us to then consider the resolution as was originally proposed by staff, which was to discontinue it, and then we can vote according to whether we wish to discontinue this year or vote against that, which then would trigger the status quo for another year. That'd be the easiest. I know, it's like a triple negative. Just because that was the proposal by staff, so I think that may be the easiest to just then for council to vote on the resolution proposed by staff in the report as is. You have that one. You want to read that one? And so just read it. Earlier tonight.
So you'll amend the resolution to the same wording in the report, and then to defer to next year, you will vote no on that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so you could actually, this evening, we've already deferred it. So by default.
I could just explain the impact and then I'll just bring it to the.
Yeah.
Sounds easier.
Okay, so if we go ahead and keep the special area levy, I guess I would direct council to the streetlight and sidewalk operating budget on page, I believe it's 49. And so the deal is we can't use the special levy to fund anything besides what its stated purpose is, which is to fund the operating and capital costs for streetlights and sidewalks. So if you go through the operating budget, it's able to fund the $6,300 in utilities, the $2,000 in, 40% of 5,000 for sidewalk maintenance. So that's $2,000 more. So we have $6,300, $2,000. It's able to fund the $2,500 for streetlight maintenance, And that's it. Everything in excess of that would be transferred to a reserve and cannot be used to offset general levy costs. So when you add up those costs, those eligible costs, it's 10,800. So in summary, if you decide to keep the special area levy, the reduction from that decision to the 2024 levy is $10,800. And if you do that, we will be at a 6.38% increase on the township side. And on a consolidated basis, it's 4.53%, which is $176 increase from last year.
For the decision, but the interim decision was to go ahead. We will officially on the record make the decision to. Because we deferred the decision, we have to officially. make the decision.
Your meeting tomorrow?
No, I'm just gonna move today. It's unfair. I don't give a shit what English.
Actually saying that for sure.
What's new?
I should don't say that. on the kitchen table. That's different. Yeah, I know it is.
The council resolves that they will maintain the special area rating in Springfield for 2024 to be reconsidered for the 2025 budget.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis moves, Counselor Cerna seconds, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so with that done, it sounds like that concludes the budget deliberations, and we'll consider the final outcome of all of our discussion next Thursday. Sounds good. So we can then move out of committee of the whole.
So the committee of the whole meeting relating to the 2024 draft budget be adjourned and the council meeting reconvene at 8:38 PM.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna moves. Counselor Glinski seconds. All in favor? And it's carried. Okay, thank you for that. Next on the agenda, we have correspondence. And so we have the follow-up to our requests for further information or consideration of the safeguards that were proposed. And I do believe, so there's part of the correspondence that was in the agenda package, and I believe we received additional correspondence today. Clerk Adams, do you want to walk us through that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So Kyle Cronk sent a letter, Tuesday, February 6th that has been added as an addendum, but, I will read that out first for you. Please find attached a letter for your consideration. I want to thank council for allowing me to speak on February 1st, 2024 at your council meeting on this important subject of the littoral drift study being proposed. I appreciate the warm welcome and our working relationship over the past years. My understanding is that you may or may not be voting on a motion to support the study proposed by the Long Point Biosphere. Please review the attached letter I have sent to Sarah Emmons, which includes my thoughts and my position on this time-sensitive matter. I believe this council has asked for stipulations to support, and I believe my letter to Sarah will concur with your thoughts. Thank you again, Kyle W. Cronk. So his letter that he sent to Sarah is as follow. Good morning, Sarah. Lensla 2 is the early stages, it's in the early stages of growth. At the Malahide meeting on February 1st, 2024, 8 members of Lensla attended to observe. The overwhelming concern is that your organization plans to have Zuzak do yet another study on Lake Erie. The second concern for all of the lakeshore owners is that your organization has ignored all the landowners and started to create a committee that excludes the people who know best and have the most to lose from a tainted study, but includes several members who have a history of discounting landowners' rights the last time they hired Zuzak. You have an award-winning botanist who has lived on Lake Erie outside of Port Barrel for 30 years, who has never been approached, yet you approached 2 others instead. I believe not one of your committee members lives on Lake Erie, yet they tell others how terrible and scary the lakeshore is. With pictures to scary people without even real-life knowledge, these actions are self-serving to maintain their funding and the need to keep themselves employed. As I've expressed to you in person the last time Zuzak did a cut and paste study, it took away all shoreline landowners' rights to protect their properties in Elgin County. We cannot and will not allow this to happen again. The present members that you have brought on are bureaucrats to have no interest in the landowners' perspectives or rights. Without input from shoreline landowners, this study will be worthless, and without proper cooperative peer engineering outside of one person's ideologies, all Lensla members will work to debunk the study too. I highly recommend reaching out to all shoreline landowners and adding them to your list for input and actual inclusion. If they are not included, and if the bureaucrats are just talking heads, Lensla too will ensure and work towards stopping the study at every point. In 2015, all shoreline landowners were excluded from any quality input and forced to debunk Zuzak's last study after the fact. All of this could have been avoided if the same members of your committee had simply listened and included the people it affected. They refused to do, and they talked down to us. Again, that plan was conducted by the same members you have included in your study. That study was shelved or rescinded by 4 of the 5 organizations who paid for it. It was flawed at so many levels, and they've been prepared under one person's personal objective. This time we are more prepared and better equipped. I have here at Lensla 2 is here to assist you only under the conditions of inclusion and valued input. I look forward to your input and to your reply. Kyle Cronk. This afternoon, Malahide has received an addendum from Sarah Emons. As written, good afternoon. The working group for the Coastline Resilience Project continued to discuss the feedback received from Malahide Township last Thursday night, and if possible, they wish to modify their response to the request that the public be included in the Technical Advisory Committee. The group is committed to transparency and collaboration. Although the terms of reference for the Technical Advisory Committee has not yet been established, the working group wishes to strengthen their statement of support for the idea of having public participation on the Technical Advisory Committee. As such, the revised statement is as follows. The membership or terms of reference for the Technical Advisory Committee has not yet been established. The governance structure for the project is proposed to be transparent and inclusive of various perspectives, expertise, and knowledge. It is expected, if the funding proposal is successful, that private landowners and stakeholders from various communities within the project area be represented on the Public Advisory Committee, and that community members at large will be invited to numerous public workshops held in several locations within the project area. The working group who are supporting this proposal are open to having the Public Advisory Committee nominate a private landowner or stakeholder member of the PAC to represent them at the Technical Advisory Committee once the outcome of the submission to ECCC is known and the project is underway. The group asks that this paragraph as an addendum to the agenda so that we are able to convey the fulsome nature of our discussion. Sincerely, Sarah Amon.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions or comments? Counselor Cerna?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I read this, it says nominate a private landowner. Is that just one person? Is that all they're looking for, is one individual?
It sounds like it, like, to sit on the committee. It's not to exclude others. They just can't have hundreds of people on the committee. But it sounds like they're willing to at least for sure include one landowner on the advisory committee who could then consult with other landowners, I would presume.
Well, I would think one's probably not enough, my thinking, because I've probably been through this before. They go back to 2015, and I know what they were up against. And I think it's not a one-man operation. I think there should be two, maybe three, because I know what the other side can do and how they like to sabotage and whatever. I think one is not enough. So until I get a little more balance, I guess you'd call it. I don't think they're setting that. It looks good on paper. And I think that's what they're trying to do is this olive branch, but I think that's about all they're doing. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Whitner?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There's a paragraph here about a public advisory committee and committee members at large will be invited to numerous public workshops held on several occasions. Is that different than it was last time? Are they allowing more public in and more landowners in, or?
That's my interpretation. I think it's clearer as far as the commitment from public involvement. But I think the request was definitely inclusion on the technical advisory committee. Which, point taken, maybe it should be more than one. And we can, if we want to issue a letter of support, we could stipulate that as part of our letter of support. Deputy Mayor, can you, I'd like to speak as a member of council, so I'll vacate the chair.
Yes, Mayor Gugere, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you, through you to my colleagues on council. So I did want to say, I'm sorry. I did feel that the response feels like there's more than one microphone on. but- There, okay, thank you. So I did feel like the response did capture most of the concerns and the safeguards that were requested. I did want to clarify that in our stipulations, we talked about avoiding harm. And I realize that the concept of harm may need some clarification. And I think if we do issue a letter of support, we should clarify that by harm, we mean any negative impact, be it environmental, economic, social, legal, landowner rights, like anything that could be perceived as a negative impact. And I can understand that. I think we had said we wanted both mutual benefits and avoiding harm. I understand that mutual benefits is not always possible, but at least if one community is going to benefit and one part of the lake is going to benefit, there shouldn't be a negative impact to other parts of the lake. So I would be prepared to move that, we received the correspondence that was issued this week, and that Malahide writes a letter of support that captures the stipulations agreed upon and including ensuring that there's more than one public member of the advisory committee. That's what I would like to move.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Any questions or comments from council about this? Yes, sir.
Through your Deputy Mayor Widner. The flow chart that was provided in the presentation last week indicates that the Technical Advisory Committee has a geomorphology expert from the university, an engineering expert from the university, a provincial regulatory officer, and a federal regulatory officer. So would this council be looking to have 2 landowners on that as well as the other 4?
Yes, Mayor Chair.
Through you, I was actually going to redirect to Councillor Cerna. I don't know if if you had a specific number in mind. If we know when one is not enough, we know there's 4 other experts. I don't know what should be our recommendation.
Just dealing with these people before, there's some that are really, really good. And I'm sorry, I can't think of their names and I don't want to go by nicknames because that might embarrass them. So I won't do that, but at least 3 that I come to mind right away that are very, very well versed in it. So I would say a minimum of 3 that just pop into mind.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Cerna. Is there any other comments on that?
So I'm willing to adjust my motion to say that we move that Malahide writes a letter of support that captures the stipulation agreed upon, in addition to the request that at least 3 members of the public be part of the Technical Advisory Committee.
That's okay with everyone? Okay. I was just going to go ahead. Have a seconder, please, to that motion? Counselor Lewis? All in favor? Unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for correspondence then. That brings us to other business. Anything else this evening, Councillor Lewis?
Just a comment, just to do with budgeting and stuff. I want to reiterate what our mayor of London, Josh Morgan, said recently, that the numbers don't match provincially for what we're mandated to do and what we have to do, and how they're cutting the funding for it. I think eventually we're gonna have to push back and say, to some of this mandated stuff, that when the funding's not here to back it, push back and just see, because it just doesn't balance at the end of the day, like he said. And he's pretty knowledgeable man, and he's got quite a budget he's working on. And yeah, when his numbers can't balance, that's got to say something for the small guys like us. So I think there's going to come a time that we need to push back a little bit and say, hey, this mandated stuff, when we can, and the opportunity arises, that we should just say, hey, whoa, unless you're going to throw a little funding our way to help with this matter. So just food for thought.
And I agree. I believe, so AMO is working, and I don't know if it's published already, but they've started their advocacy and calling for the government, for the provincial government, to revisit the entire formula. So over the years, you tweak here, you tweak there, you adjust, you add a program, you remove a program. But over time, you just have to clean slate and start over. So I think, based on what you're hearing, if council agrees, I think we should add our voice to what AMO is doing. I think there will be lots of messages, lots of opportunities, and different communication, different reports that they're going to issue. So I think we should stay connected to that initiative and really push. I think it is time. We're just saying, let's just review the formula and adapt it to this era. Good point. Councillor Cerna.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a thought. We're talking about the pool agreement tonight, and we have an agreement with Elmer and the arena, and we had an agreement we signed with the ministry for Port Bruce. And I'm just wondering if we can't come up with some kind of a motion or a bylaw that limits the term of our agreement. Like the pool agreement was 50 years old. Okay. I don't know how long the agreement was for the Port Bruce Beach. The arena is what, 25 years old? And I'm just wondering, like, I'm 65, so the pool agreement was I was 15 when that thing was signed. Okay. The guy that signed it is long dead. Okay, Forrest Moore was the mayor of Elmer. Okay, and I'm just wondering, you know, and I'm sure, I know, I'm probably gonna get beat up in the Elmer paper next week because John is a big pool guy, the editor. But, you know, I shouldn't be held as a Malahide counselor in 2024 for an agreement that happened in 1974. So somehow we should have, if you want to sign an agreement in 2024, I shouldn't be 104 by the time the damn thing expires. So we should have a time limit on these agreements that we're making today so that my grandkids don't have to answer for it if they want to enter municipal politics. So that's just something I want to throw out there, but it sounds like a damn good idea to me. Okay? Thank you.
If you do say so yourself. Yeah, and I think it is common practice for agreements to have, you can have a 99-year lease or agreement, you can have, but it's probably good practice to have some specific stipulations. CODS, you want to comment?
Yes, I think historically there were a lot of handshake agreements that were done, and sometimes I think people looked at it in the moment. You know, this would be good, and it sounds like a good idea. But to your point, when you have long agreements like that, the environment changes, governing bodies change, what's relevant changes, and unfortunately, the agreement still stands as a legal document unless there's some way to get out of it, usually through a court order. So, um, it is definitely something to look at with any new agreements we go into. Look at the term as being a very strategic component for those agreements, and you know, as to what term would be in place, would depend on the scope of services or whatever it is that we're agreeing to. But always with any agreement, the term and especially termination clauses for how to get out of it are very relevant and very important. And we definitely want to ensure that we do legal reviews wherever it's relevant to what do you say, long-term agreements, or for anything that has a large monetary impact.
Councillor
Like,
Pino?
make it like a term limit and like a driver's license or a license for a car, make like 10 years. And if it's going good, then renew it for another 10 years. I think like marriages should be like that. You get a marriage license and if 10 years, and if it's good, then renew it for 10 years. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than divorce. I know. And that's what it should be. 10 years? Yep. She's all right. Then renew it. And that's good. And that's the way it should be done. Put a time limit on. Thank you.
Any further or other business? Malahide business? Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's not really correspondence, but Bonnie Shackleton wrote in about the windmills. And I happen to be on a sort of a group that's been involved with windmills down in Dover Center for quite a few years, and gotten University of Windsor hydrogeology students doing their master's thesis on the whole situation down there. But if someone wanted to put one across the back ridge of our farm, I'd be okay with that. Geologically speaking, it's completely fine. But the province has completely removed the township from any of that decision-making process. And I find that a little bit odd. It's to stop the NIMBYism, so that people that, no, you can't do that in my backyard. Well, you know, the setbacks are 0.5 kilometer. It's not in anyone's backyard. But there are places that are appropriate to put them. There are places that are inappropriate to put them. And the only thing that seems to be whether it's appropriate or not is if the landowners have signed an agreement. That's ridiculous. You have the Ministry of the Environment that wants more green energy. They're also in charge of water wells. So the people in Dover Center have had no say in anything. Their groundwater, a lot of their wells are completely screwed now and with no recourse. So I don't know if there's anything that sort of we can do as a township or write any sort of letter to the Ministry of the Environment or Energy or something, but like if they want to put one in the back of the ridge of our farm, I'm fine with that. The groundwater is 175 feet. The bases of these things are 40-foot cement cubes. So that construction is the least invasive to deal with the groundwater. The method they use in Dover Center was driving in steel piles into the black shale. Well, that's not the place to be doing stuff like that. If you wanted to put one at the east end of Springfield, the 40 by 40 cube would only be 20 feet off of the groundwater and everything would start shaking and vibrating and fall over. It would liquefy the ground.
So I'll just,
well,
there's a
there's
lot of really good technical information and just the concern specifically for the township and what would you be requesting from the township to look into?
local input.
And so to
And
verify
it's-
the process.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not
So,
necessarily, it's
So we'll look into that.
it's to stop the, like, I know they do it provincially to stop the NIMBYism, but there should be some sort of mechanism where a township has some sort of say as to where it should go.
Okay,
But
so
the
we'll-
Ministry of the Environment should be looking after it, but they aren't. So if they're not, then someone has to say something about where's an appropriate spot, and where isn't.
So CODS, would it be appropriate then to, for staff to maybe inform council or report back on, just to clarify what is the process and what is the level of input for municipality in these types of projects? There are lots of conversations that are starting to happen and we may have some concerned citizens. So I think it would be useful for us to be informed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I think that's a excellent way to look into this topic. I think we'll have staff provide some sort of review of the existing process and look into where specifically we would have the opportunity to input municipal comments into the process, and if it's not sufficient through the existing process, the means in which we can make it better.
Deputy Mayor Widner, did you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jazier. I did attend a workshop at Roma and this was specifically brought up about windmills. But the one comment that really stuck with me is these things wouldn't happen unless there was total buy-in from the community. They're not gonna force anybody. So if anybody did complain, and I did send that to Bonnie, with no response, but that's one thing I took away from that meeting. So we could check on that to see if that is in fact is true, but it was a good workshop explaining windmills and things like that.
Okay, so we'll clarify. There'll be good information for our constituents and for ourselves. Good. Okay. Confirmatory bylaw?
The bylaw number 2405 being confirmatory bylaw be given first, second, and third reading and properly signed and sealed.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna moves, Counselor Lewis seconds. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That means we're ready for adjournment, resolution.
The council adjourned its meeting at 9:04 PM to meet again on February 15th, 2024 at 7:30 PM.
Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Widner moves, Counselor Cerna seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. Thank you to staff. Have a nice evening.